Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/AmigosPodcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Amigos, the podcast about everything Amiga. Amigos is a proud member of the Throwback Network, your home for quality retro podcasts. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron Dowdy and John Bodovkar Schaller.
Hi, and welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we are going to be talking about Dragon's Lair.
Ooh, one of my faves.
But before we do, I've got a couple things I need to get off my chest, Aaron.
Oh, boy. Well, okay. What's the problem, Boat?
So, we try and keep it mostly positive on this show.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to be negative.
No.
I was feeling, a little generous, and I decided to support those fine folks over at Amiga Forever.
Oh, great.
With,
Cloanto.
Yeah, with purchasing of the value edition of Amiga Forever.
Oh, okay. I've not heard of it.
It's basically the one that you can download. It's
correct. Yeah, I understand.
So I downloaded it, and it comes with all these games.
Yeah.
And at first, I thought, well, this is cool. It's coming. I bet they talked to all the rights holders and they got all these games. And no, they're all cracks. They're all the same ones that we play.
Well, I never.
That was the first sort of disappointment. The second one was the first game that I tried, Arkanoid. It ran super fast and was unplayable. So I was not happy with Amiga, but I could live with it because I thought, at least you've paid for, Kickstart ROMs that are legitimate, and that's something good. Well, I go to load up Dragon's Lair, and I start up WinUAE, and I get this error. It says, standalone playback of the selected content is not enabled. You can upgrade at any time to unlock all the features of the Plus Edition. Signed, Amiga Forever. So what Amiga Forever does is it scans your hard drive somehow and finds your WinUAE installation and proceeds to make it cut off certain features.
Oh, my. I was not aware of this.
Yeah. And so I'm just telling all of you all out there in listener land, at least with the value edition, if you want to download it and support these guys and so you can have legitimate Kickstarter ROMs, that's fine. But be wary of actually installing it on your system.
So what you're saying here is, that you downloaded this legitimate copy of the value edition of Amiga Forever, and it actually wouldn't let it prevented you from just running UAE outright without their package being involved.
It let me run it, but it threw up that error.
What do you think? What was the error again?
Well, it wasn't an error; it was a pop-up screen.
Yeah,
and it said standalone playback of the selected content is not enabled. You can upgrade at any time to unlock all the features of the Plus Edition. Now, I don't know what any of that stuff means. But it also was not letting me use the Kickstart ROM that came with Amiga Forever on WinUAE. It would only let me use it through the Amiga Forever package.
Now, as I recall, and again, I've looked at the package. I've not ran it as a user because I've got an Amiga, but I think their ROMs are a larger version of the ROM. I've heard. It seems like I've heard that it's a legal ROM, but it's a slightly variant, and there could be something there to it. I don't know.
And so what I had to do is I searched obviously, and I found out that you have to delete a DLL file from Amiga Forever to get it to not put that error up on your WinUAE.
Really? And what did that work?
And it worked. But
that's nutty.
It just you try and do the right thing, and then when after doing the right thing, it's somehow worse than doing the gray thing. It's disheartening.
I will say this: I'm going to be a fair man here. If a representative of Cloanto hears this or is notified, and something weird is going on, or they have an explanation for it, I'd like to hear it.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that installing a package would mess around with your other independent features, but maybe there's a reason for it, the Windows reason that I don't know about. But that is sort of shady. Maybe they've got the rights to those games, but that is also kind of odd that it would have the crack stuff in there. It's odd, and I know their larger packages has more stuff. So it is odd to me. Boy, I don't want to get a flame thing going here, but it's odd to me that a company that is very fervent about their Kickstart ROMs would also have pirated stuff that they're distributing with their package. Now, again, there may be an explanation. I'm going to look into this, and in a couple of weeks, maybe we can have something more definitive. But that's interesting.
Yeah. So if you have any more information on that, feel free to write into the podcast at amigospodcast.com. The next thing. So enough of that bad news. It's time to get back to the positive.
All right, good.
The Kickoff World Cup has taken place. The Kickoff 2 World Cup. You remember talking about this a couple weeks ago?
I bet this is quite a manic tournament indeed.
So as we talked about when we did our Kickoff 2 episode, the Kickoff 2 World Cup was held in Dublin, Ireland.
All right.
And it is over. It is done. And congratulations to Andy G from England for winning.
Aye.
Ars Technica did a great write-up of the Kickoff 2 World Cup, kind of the culture surrounding Kickoff 2, and why people are still playing it after these many years. Great article. Ars Technica, usually they've got some pretty good tech writing, and so I'll link to that in the show notes. But it's over and done with, and I guess the bids for next year's Kickoff World Cup are being put out there. It's interesting. I found out that Sweden narrowly lost the bid.
I will say, hopefully, it's the bids for where to hold this World Cup are less shady than the actual World Cup.
Yeah,
as we know. I will say we both turned the corner on this game on the live stream. I mean, as a solo act, as a single player game, I was not down with the clown, but as two players, it's wacky, manic soccer fun, and I did enjoy it. Now I don't know how these guys get good enough to be in a World Cup. And maybe you'll have to go watch. I'm sure there's a YouTube video of this, and I'll have to go ahead and check it out. And I'd like to see people that are really, really good at this play it and see if it looks like a crazy time that we had.
And you know what's funny is, you remember when we played, the score would be 1-0.
Yeah.
Or 0-0. These scores, 13-14, 17-18.
Holy
These guys
smokes.
are scoring like manic.
Yeah.
So, definitely check that out. I'll link to it in the show notes.
Beautiful.
And, so that's the World Cup news. And in related news, I thought I'd stick both of these news items in here since they're both relatively recent. Dino Dini, the man of Kickoff 2,
Yes.
his Kickoff Revival game is still on its way to the PS4 and the Vita. So he's hard at work on that. And not only that, there's a new Sensible Soccer game coming soon.
See, that's of course there is.
So
The feud continues unabated.
yeah. So this is John Hare. He's the one of the original developers for Sensible Soccer. Now he's calling it Sociable Soccer, I suppose, because he no longer owns the rights to the Sensible name. But
Stupid name.
But
Sorry.
this is is Sensible Soccer a good
Sociable
game?
soccer. What are we going to do? Facebook while you're kicking the ball?
I don't know.
Get it out.
So this is a brand new article. Well, it's not brand new. It came out on November 26th is the article I'll link to in
New
the show
enough.
notes. But basically, he tried to do a Kickstarter for the new Sociable Soccer. He wanted £300,000.
Reasonable. That's what, about $500,000 US?
Yeah,
All right.
and unfortunately, he only got about 1/10 of what he needed.
Holy
he
smokes.
got about 30K.
That surprises me because people love that game.
Yeah. So, but he says on his page that development continues. He's already got a prototype coming up, and he thinks that he's going to be able to publish it through normal, non-crowd-funded means.
That's weird, isn't it? I mean, you'd think a game like that. I mean, you hear about it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess people moved on from the Sensible Soccer series.
They're still playing the Sensible Soccer that they've always loved on their Amiga.
What was the platform that he was going to release?
This was going to be on the PC, the Xbox One, and the PS4.
Maybe the Sensible Soccer crowd never upgraded their stuff.
Right.
You might be onto something there, Boat.
So, but the good news, though, is that, like I said, development continues on that, and he seems real positive about it. I saw the screenshots and saw a movie, and it looked good. It looked like an updated
So he's got
version.
something that moves and works?
Yeah, and it looks retro but updated. It's still that bird's eye top-down view, but, the models are a little bit more detailed. They're full 3D models and things like that.
I hope they both get realized. I like the idea of these old Amiga soccer games coming back into style. Of course, I guess they never went out of style into a certain group of people. But
Right.
Yeah, there's room for two good soccer games.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just a little bit of Amiga news this week. Now we're going to move on to our game, Dragon's Lair. So Dragon's Lair is, I'm sure many of you know, first achieved fame in the arcades. It was a Laserdisc video game published by Cinematronics in 1983.
Oh yes, I remember when it came out.
It was actually based on this technology that this guy was trying to sell. And I didn't write this down.
I think his name was this
should.
Rick Dyer.
Is this the
And
guy?
his,
He
and
had
his flip book.
Yeah, it's like
movie.
a flip book thing. And he's trying to pitch this idea. It's not working out. He took it to all these toy companies. They said no way. And then he got the bright idea that maybe what he needed was animation. Real top-notch animation. So he hired Don Bluth, who he came up through Disney, but then he made his own animation studio. And at that point, he'd only done The Secret of Nim. That was, of course, he's done so many films since then.
Yeah, he worked for Disney for quite a while. I believe he worked on The Rescuers and a bunch of other movies. And, of course, after that, went on to do, I think he did American Tail.
Yeah.
He did, what was that awesome space movie oh, boy. It's killing me too.
Not Space Ace?
No. Well, Space Ace obviously, but he did a space movie, animated movie that was really good. Bluth's a hell of an artist.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. And they developed this game on a shoestring. It only cost $1 million to make, and I mean that's not very much money for a fully animated production.
Titan AE.
Yeah,
that's
Titan AE.
The game. That's the movie.
There
yeah.
you go.
That is cheap, yeah.
So there's some kind of funny things about that. They couldn't afford to hire any actors, so the guys in the studio just did all the voices, with the exception of the narrator. And they couldn't afford to hire any models for the animation, so you know what they used? Playboy magazine.
Yes.
So
for Daphne. Yeah, I had heard that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Daphne. She's a looker, all right.
Good
and
choice.
It's easy to see. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's the game was of course most famous for being it's most famous for a lot of reasons, but it was the first arcade game to cost 50 cents. And that was partly because the hardware that it was running was so new and so expensive. It was the first game to use the Laserdisc format. And these cabinets, I didn't realize this, they actually shipped with the original Laserdisc players, the first Laserdisc players that came out.
They were junk.
Were hitting these machines.
Yeah.
And, it's not necessarily that they were junk, but they were being asked to do something that normal Laserdiscs...
Yeah, they were consumer products in a world where they're going to get beat to hell.
And not only that, whenever you watch a movie, most of the time that laser just just goes right on through to the end.
Yeah.
In Dragon's Lair, every couple seconds sometimes it's going to be skipping around, and those machines just weren't made for that.
I know. Did you get to play this much in the arcade?
I've never played this in the arcade.
Really? Have you ever played a cabinet at all?
No.
Let me enlighten you, sir. I was around when sadly, I was around the arcades in '83 when this stuff really caught fire.
Mid-20s, mid-30s?
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is the first laser. I'm not sure. It's because I know Sega had a game out called Star Ranger or something, Space Ranger, and it was real close. And I think this might be, you might be right there, but in case someone wants to jump on us, I'm not 100% sure about that. But Dragon's Lair had the real clunky. Well, like you said, it's not the laser disc's fault, but the thing was beat down. Of course, what are people doing in an arcade when they get mad at a machine? They kick the hell out of it, they punch it. And you could make the disc skip by kicking the crap out of the machine and get weird results. I've seen that plenty of times. But these things were often down. They were broken all the time. And often when they weren't broken, they were jacked up. The joystick would be mashed. This game made people angry. I've seen people just beat the tar out of this game. I mean, of all the ones I've seen in the arcade, I've seen all the big Laserdisc games. This one took more of a beating. I don't know if because it was new, people didn't understand the technology or how you played, but they would just crush this game. And so it's a real collectible now. People, as you know, you're in the arcade business. They go crazy trying to get these Laserdisc games, but I mean, back in the day, you'd be hard pressed to find a cabinet in good shape or a Laserdisc that wasn't all mashed. So
that makes sense. These things sold pretty well for a year at least. In '83,
before everything tanked.
83, that was the year of the big arcade crash.
Yeah.
And
in America.
Yeah, in America. And Dragon's Lair was marketed as something that you could use to raise your falling revenues. So it says in July 1983, 1,000 machines had been distributed, and there was a backlog of about 7,500. And then by the end of '83, this publication, Electronic Games and Electronic Fun, rated Dragon's Lair as the #1 arcade game in the USA. It grossed, reportedly, over $32 million for Cinematronics. So Cinematronics did all well, did pretty well.
Well, I'll tell you something. When this game came out, this was amongst the first. It definitely was the first time I ever paid $2 to play a game like you mentioned. This game had a massive crowd around it. It was so massive that they had installed a screen on top of the arcade machine that people could watch the game being played, which that was the first time I'd ever seen that. Now, I saw subsequent Laserdisc games do that, but I mean, you couldn't get through the crowd to play the game. It was massive. I mean, it was a big money maker. And unlike a lot of arcade games, when I saw games when they would be popular, the arcade would simply get another one. These were very expensive. I guess that I never saw any place that had 2 Dragon's Lairs or 2 Space Aces side by side. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that these things were pulling in big money.
Unfortunately, the Don Bluth sponsored, not sponsored, but the Don Bluth produced Laserdisc games. The success of them were short-lived. By the middle of '84, Space Ace had come out. It did not do as well as Dragon's Lair. It definitely didn't have the cachet that Dragon's Lair did as far as the number of ports that it got and things like that.
Well, I'd say by now it's pretty well ported. I mean, if you think about it, those games have been.
Space Ace?
Space Ace is on a lot of the same places that Dragon's Lair is. I mean, Sega CD has a CDI or CD.
Well, okay, I guess
and
direct,
the PC and Amiga.
Direct ports of the arcade
Yeah,
game. But
Atari ST.
It didn't have the craziness that Dragon's Lair did, where they would take the IP and port it over to an entirely new game, like they did for the Nintendo. Or
But it probably got lucky for that.
Yeah,
though.
it's not necessarily a bad thing. So that's a little background. You want to add anything else to the?
Well, I'll tell you, I was obsessed with this game as a child. Like I said, it came out in '83. That I was about 12. All right. The first time I ever saw this game was I was watching Entertainment Tonight with my parents, and they had a commercial in there for it, and no game got that. And I was like, "Holy smokes, what is this?" Everyone was impressed, and just to see it and play it, I mean, it really. I had to have it. And I told myself then, I was like, I will buy any computer console that can play this game at home. And for a while, I thought the ColecoVision was going to do it. And to a certain degree, the Atom did. Mm-hmm. If you've ever played the Dragon's Lair on the Atom. But Coleco had promised a laser add-on that would play these Laserdisc games. It never happened. It never panned out. And here comes the Amiga, right? Out of nowhere. I'm at my buddy's house. He goes, "Hey, look at this." He puts in the disc. I was like, "Holy smell. I got to have one." That's when I turned the corner on the Amiga. I'd seen other stuff. I was like, I had to have it. So this game indirectly made me buy an Amiga. So it holds a special place.
Speaking of the Amiga version, let's talk a little bit about it.
All right.
It was a large game. They did a lot with compression and to try and get the size down, but it still shipped on 8 discs. So that's not as many as some games, but more than most, I think.
I think there was a 6 and an 8.
Okay.
I looked. I saw 2 different sets. I own this game. Among other reasons, it was impossible to copy these. I mean, I'll give ReadySoft credit; their protection was unbelievable, and it worked. I've got Space Ace and Escape from Sensuous Castle and Dragon's Lair, and I think there were two different sets, a 6 and an 8. But again, I tried to confirm that and I couldn't. I've seen 2 different sets that you can download, so there's at least, and I don't know what the differences are, to be completely honest with you.
I downloaded the 8-disc version, the game looks, for being on a console, coming out. This came out in '89 on the Amiga
Computer,
or being on a computer. Sorry. This is, it looks great. It really does. Obviously it can't hold a candle to the original, but it's a serviceable. It looks great. I mean, it really does.
It does.
The bad part about the Amiga Dragon's Lair is that it didn't include all of the screens.
Not even close.
and you get a lot of repetition because of that.
Yeah.
And and it just kind of leaves you feeling, maybe if you hadn't played the arcade version, you might feel better about it. But just, flipping the stage so it's backwards doesn't count.
Well, the arcade did that, to be fair. But my biggest problem with the Amiga version, I didn't have any problem when it first came out, but when you look back on this stuff, it's a lot like Defender of the Crown. Okay, it's the same thing we said last time. You kind of look back on it now, you're like, it looks good now, but I mean, at the time, you just never seen it before. Dragon's Lair at home was astounding. It looked really good, and nothing else could pull it off. It sounded like the arcade game. The screens that it featured looked like the arcade. They were super low res, and they weren't all there, but it was good enough, and nothing else was close. But the big problem was so many discs. You would sit there, and this is before we had the advantage of the hard drive hacks and the UAE to do the disc swapping. I've sat there and just swapped those discs over and over and over, and you end up looking at the disc swap screen more than you look at the game. And it's disheartening. And I mean, in some ways, it provided longevity to the game, because after a couple plays, you're like, okay, I can't do this again. And you put it down. And then later on, you're like, I'm going to give that Dragon's Lair another try. But the amount of discs, and this would be revisited time and time again on the Amiga with your Mortal Kombat and your Street Fighters and all the big adventure games that would come out. When you're swapping that many discs, plus the possibility that one of those discs is going to go south on you, when you've got a 6 or an 8 disc game and disc 4 breaks, you're screwed. Yeah. and I had that happen to me a bunch of times on various games, and you would either play up to the point where it didn't work anymore, or you just would give up, and it was frustrating. All that said, this was an achievement of an enormous magnitude, to take the beautiful Bluth animation and distill it down into something that could fit on a computer. I mean, this ran on the OCS. It was a brilliant feat to get it down to where it could even be on 6 discs, if you consider how big this would have been on a laser disc. And the artist did a fine job. I'd say, disc swapping aside, it's also too short. I mean, when you boil it down, you're probably got, I don't know how many minutes of animation, maybe 5. Maybe not counting the flipped screen. That's a lot. That's not much. So the gameplay, it's funny, if you put the disc swapping in there, you're a half-hour gameplay, but without that, you're looking at 5 minutes of gameplay. Probably not enough, right?
Yeah. I wanted to talk about I was reading about the different ports, and the NES version of Dragon's Lair was profiled by the Angry Video Game Nerd.
Oh yes.
But I want to talk about the Game Boy version,
which I think is quite brilliant.
Well, do you know this? The Game Boy version is actually, now you may be thinking of, are you talking about the original Game Boy version?
I'm talking about the one that's basically like the arcade.
Okay, this is not that.
That one's quite brilliant. I mean, to compress it onto the Game Boy I couldn't believe it.
This game is called Dragon's Lair: The Legend.
Okay.
And it's got the protagonist, it's got Dirk, it's got Mordok the villain, you're saving Princess Daphne. But the game is actually a port of a 5-year-old ZX Spectrum game called Roller Coaster. The result being a platform game where Dirk has to negotiate a series of thinly disguised fairground rides.
Wow, no, I have not played that. That's wacky.
When I read that, I was like, boy, I gotta mention that on the podcast.
I found something else wacky. Going back to the Amiga version, and I don't know if you, and I didn't know this until I was doing some research for this. Inside the if you were trying, one of the coders that were trying to hack these games back in the day to pirate them, the people from that manufactured the game put a message in there. Did you see this? I'll read it. It says, a message to crackers. Nobody wants copy protection. All it is designed to do is give a program a fighting chance. Now, we realize that there is a great competition to see which group breaks this game first. However, if you do break it, please consider this. If you let the game out early after release, there are few sales, and it will be difficult to justify a follow-up game of this type. Nobody benefits, not the developers, not the users, and not the Amiga community. Please reconsider holding on to it for a while and not letting the game suffer. The decision is yours. So I thought that was kind of neat, because no one would see that unless they were in there trying to hack the game, and they knew it. And this game wasn't one that none of the Ready Soft stuff. They had something on the discs that was. I saw a few programs that could hack them, but they had really good copy protection, and so their copy protection held up. I mean, like I said, almost all my stuff's originals, or at least a couple of discs of them were originals, because they couldn't be copied.
Yeah.
So I'll give them credit. But I thought it was neat that they actually, put something in there to to sway people from pirating the game. I had a chance to look up what the game's going for now on eBay. Really all over the map. Box copies are there, not that difficult to get. I saw the discs go $10, and the box sets go anywhere between $25 and $70. So if you're looking for a copy of this, I mean, it's definitely available out there. If you look at who actually made the game, which we didn't touch on this, but Ready Soft, they pretty much did all the laser games. That's pretty much what they did. I mean, I'll look over the list of what they did here. The only things I didn't recognize were Wrath of the Demon. I'm not familiar with that one. Scary Mutant Space Aliens from Mars. I need to look at that one. That's a good name.
Yeah.
Guy Spy, remembered. Space Ace, of course. And then Dragon's Lair, we should probably go into this briefly, is that Dragon's Lair had, I don't even want to call it a sequel. It's more like a part 2, which was called Escape from Singe's Castle. I believe you could link them up even, and it's more stuff from the arcade, basically. And they added a few things like a maze and some other, like, a kind of, I guess I could say, original content to it. But it's basically, if you take those two games, smush them together, you're coming close to emulating the arcade in its entirety. Mm-hmm. I've got both. Singe's is a little more refined. The interface on these things is kind of goofy, but it works. It's very basic. What did you think of the overall gameplay? I mean, did you think it stuck pretty well to the? Yeah,
I mean, I'm still not very good at it.
Yeah.
It's a game where you really have to learn those screens, and you have to know exactly when to do the things. And I enjoy playing it. It seems like a perfect game for that you'd want to play, on the go, on a phone or something like that, real light. And I did look, there is a iPhone version, Android versions available. So, but yeah, it is what it is,
Yeah, and of course, Dragon's Lair, Amiga, one of the few computers that could pull it off. They kept the ball rolling. Well, like I said, Dragon's Lair, the Singe's Castle. Then they did Dragon's Lair Time Warp, which is more of the same. Space Ace. Then they did something they called Dragon's Lair 3, which had some system exclusive. They had some exclusive stuff that didn't really appear on anything else. It was just a weird amalgamation of scenes that had been cut. I think there was one new scene added that featured a pirate ship. It was some stuff that had been cut from Dragon's Lair 2 Time Warp. So really, in a lot of ways, Amiga is home to the Laserdisc movement. I mean, in a weird way, it's got the goods, Plus original stuff that Ready Soft did that was Laserdisc-esque, like Guy Spy. So if you're into that stuff, those are all interesting titles to check out. Again, the gameplay's there. Your scenes aren't complete, but if you just want to get a sampling of that arcade feeling, it did the job.
The Dragon's Lair is not dead, aside from the numerous remakes and Blu-rays.
Oh, yeah.
And
We'll never die, right?
But there's a new game that is in the works. Are you aware of this?
I was aware of the movie Kickstarter, but not a new game.
Well, that may be actually what I'm talking about. This is Dragon's Lair Returns. It is a movie,
right?
I'd
read that a game would soon follow, so I'm assuming that would be one and the same. Yeah.
They launched a Kickstarter for it back in October.
Yeah.
Which was supposed to raise about $500,000 to cover the cost, not of the movie itself, but kind of a sizzle reel,
right?
To show.
Right. It was kind of wacky.
Yeah. That failed.
Yeah, and they were asking for quite a bit of money.
Yeah, they only raised half of what they wanted. So now they've done the ingenious thing of now they've launched an Indiegogo campaign to raise $250,000. So they all they want is what they wanted what they raised the first time. They just need a new avenue to raise it in.
I'd like to see that happen. There, in the old days, Again, I'll go back to Shane R. Monroe's show. He interviewed Don Bluth, and he was friends with a lot of guys in the Bluth group. There's a script that's been floating around for years for a Dragon's Lair movie that is not what they were pitching on Kickstarter. I guess they've scrapped that old script, but it's been something that's been sort of in Hollywood hell for a while. So, I like to see him get something off. Bluth's animation's beautiful. Secret of NIMH was great. Titan AE. He did the animated part of Xanadu, if you ever saw that, which I thought was pretty neat. Hey, I'm old.
I never saw Xanadu.
Oh, you're missing out, Bo. So yes, let's all pitch in and see if we can get Bluth over the top on this. And I think I'll throw him a couple bucks myself.
Yeah. We don't really have a score this time. We'll just say that you won. I'm sure you can get farther in this game than I can.
Unless the discs don't want to read, because I actually was reading this off the discs.
It's the biggest nemesis.
Well,
of all.
I thought to be fair to this game, I'd want to review it with the discs being involved, and it was exactly the way I remembered it. It was like a lot of waiting.
We want to thank our sponsors, O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, and Brent Dowdy. And
this was his request.
Yeah, this was his request. If you'd like to request us to review a certain game, head on over to our Patreon page, and if you throw us some cash, we'll do whatever you want.
I'll literally do whatever you want for money.
So that's Dragon's Lair. Hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we're going to be back with one of Aaron's favorites. This is Sword of Sodan.
It's underappreciated, I think, but we'll see if it's worth the what I think it is anyway.
All right, until then,
Adios.
Adios.